Welcome to Hard Beautiful Journey, where we embrace vulnerability as our superpower and let courage light our path. I'm Tiff Carson, here to share heartfelt stories of healing, grief, and resilience. Each week, I'll talk with guests from experts to everyday heroes about their journeys through adversity. Together, we'll uncover the beauty that emerges from life's challenges and how each experience can spark profound growth. Join us on this courageous journey of connection and transformation. There are moments in life that split us wide open and nothing looks the same again. And grief has that power. It shakes the ground beneath us and it leaves us searching for solid footing. My guest today, Ligia Houben, has lived this reality since she was just 12 years old when her father died unexpectedly. That loss set her on a path that she never could have predicted, and one that eventually became her life's mission. She's now a grief specialist, a life transitions coach, and the author of several books, including her latest, Allow Me to Live My Grief and Heal from the Inside Out. What I love about Ligia's work is that she doesn't just teach theory, she's lived this. When she later lost her mother, she applied her own framework, the 11 Principles of Transformation, to move through her own devastating heartbreak. And this is what makes her voice so powerful. She's been there and she knows the way forward. So here's the question for you as we begin. What loss in your life have you been carrying quietly, maybe even alone? And what would it feel like to honor it with love instead of trying to get over it? Hold that in your heart because this conversation might just be a new doorway. Welcome to the podcast. Ligia, how are you?
I am so moved by your words. They were so beautiful, Tiff. Thank you so much for having me in your show, in your podcast.
I am super grateful that you are here. I would love to start with this. When someone asks you what you do, how do you introduce yourself in a way that captures the heart of your mission?
I say I help people transform their grief, transform their loss, and transform their lives.
Beautiful. So let's get into that grief. You lost your father at a young age, and you've said that that moment has shaped so much of your path. Can you take us back to what your life looked like for you as a 12-year-old navigating that kind of heartbreak?
When I lost my father, I was such a cheerful girl, the youngest of three sisters, and I was super close to my father. And when he died, and yes, it was a sudden death because he had been taken from Nicaragua, my homeland, to Miami, where I live now, because he had something with a gallbladder or something. So they were checking him out, and the day that he was going to be released from the hospital, discharged, he died suddenly from his heart. His aorta ruptured. And that changed my life completely because it was unexpected. It was with the hope that he was, going to be well. We were going to join him in Miami. So the whole thing. And I was at school. Back then, I studied a Catholic school with nuns, and they are the ones who told me what had happened, the superior, the mother superior. And for me, it was a shock. I couldn't believe it. I got into disbelief because I've been praying for him to be well. So it was super painful, Tiff. And yes, my world changed because of that. And I didn't know back then what life will bring to me, what I was going to do when I grew up. And those times were painful. And a month after my father died, I lost my grandmother and she lived with us. So it was another loss, and that was very painful as well. So very early in life, I learned about losses, about deep profound losses. And with time, a year after, there was an earthquake in my country, destroyed the whole capital, the city. So another loss. So when we talk about losses and when I reflect my life, I'm like, a loss after loss. And sometimes we expect life, no, to be without losses, without being sad. However, they happen. And they happened to me very early. And I think that because all those losses is that I developed resilience afterwards, and I got inspired into getting into this world of helping the griever, helping the bereaved.
Mhm. So hearing how young you were when you first dealt with grief. My boys are 12 years old. They're twins, and I have a 17-year-old daughter. I just can't think about how those experiences, like, they follow us, right? And how deep that loss is at that age. How did those losses, all of those losses, shape how you saw yourself growing up and even the way that you related to others, like people who hadn't lost their father? How did you find yourself relating to them?
It's amazing. I don't think anybody has ever asked me that question. It touches my heart deeply because as a 12-year-old, you see your other friends, they have their dads, their fathers. And I remember that that was something that I felt. I don't have my father. When you have like Father's Day and all those things that you create things for your father. And I remember that I missed having my father. Back then I had a very, very, well, still to this age. My neighbor was a girl and we were inseparable. We were friends since we were 10, and she was my companion. I would say she was my therapist, my support group. All that because I didn't go to any of that. Back then in Nicaragua, more than 50 years ago, that didn't exist. In my family, we're Catholic, and my mother was very religious. I would say from my heart that that's what helped us a lot. Our faith, our religion, very close family, very close. So that helped us. Having my best friend with me also helped me a lot, even when I would face that reality, going to places that other girls had parents, fathers, and I did not. I was able to navigate that,
Mhm.
actually. I
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like it is so interesting because I don't think anybody has ever really asked me this. I don't think I felt different.
Mhm.
I don't. And I think, wow, reflecting on this now, that's why I love your program, so reflective. Wow, reflecting on this now, I think that has to do, oh wow, because my father's presence was so eminent. And I'll share with you the reason.
Mhm.
My father was a self-made man in my country. From very, very humble beginnings, he wanted to do something with his life. So he moved to the capital and he got into businesses, into different things. Before it was with the carriage.
Yeah.
It's amazing with carriages because how he started, then with taxis, and then he came up to own. He was working with Ford,
Mhm.
Ford, Mazda. He was into the automobiles business. So that's how he became very well known, and that he had dealerships and all that. So he became very well known because how successful he was, but more than that, because how good he was. He became a philanthropist and he loved people and people loved him. So when he died, wherever I would go, I would say, "Oh, you are the daughter of Julio Martinez, of my father." And then he was so present in my country, in wherever I went. So that's now I'm reflecting on this. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he was always with me,
Mhm. Yeah.
because yeah, so that was
Pe
a beautiful thing
People
that you
brought him
you
up.
made me think about.
Aw.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, in the articles, in newspapers or what. when he died, for the funeral, the date of the funeral, the flower shops, even an article came in the newspaper. The flowers in the flower shops were gone because
Mhm.
there were so many people who went to the funeral. So he was known, maybe what we call now in these times celebrity, but never because of that, because of his goodness thing.
Mhm.
So that may be a reason that I never felt that I missed that, because he was always there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. That's so
interesting.
beautiful. So
Yes.
you have walked this grief journey and you've turned it into a framework that you now help other people with their grief journey. And it's called the 11 Principles of Transformation. Do you want to walk us quickly through those 11 principles and why they matter for someone that feels so stuck in their grief?
Okay, thank you. And I will say that. However, I want to say something before, because of what you said, that when people get stuck in grief, because something else happened to me, and I was very cheerful girl, after I went, through, crying and all that. And yes, however, life continued. I continued with it, and I was very cheerful. Just moving forward many years, when I studied psychology at the University of Miami, I took a course in the religious studies department called Death and Dying. Tiff. That course caught my attention like a magnet. I had to take that course. I didn't know why, but I had to. I was able to get in after many challenges. I was able to get in because it was full already. And every single time I went to that class, I cried. Every single time. And I realized, talking to my professor who I loved, he became my mentor afterwards, that it was the first time as an adult that I was facing my grief, because I was talking about death and dying, about grief. I never gave the word to my pain. It was grief. So in that classroom is when I realized, wow, it is so important to recognize grief, to give it a name, to validate it, and to process it. That's why when you said stuck in grief, I never knew that I was at a totally unconscious level stuck in that, because I had never really processed. Even if I was laughing and smiling outside, when I went into that depth, I came to touch my essence in that aspect.
Mhm.
So that's why I wanted to mention it.
Mm.
And since then, I became an advocate of how important it is to validate grief. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I experienced it, no? So
Mhm.
then after that, I is when I realized that I wanted to do what I do now to help the griever, became a thanatologist and specialized in grief. And I wrote a book called Transform Your Loss, Your Guide to Strength and Hope. And that is my first book about grief. And in that book is that I introduced my methodology, the
Mhm.
principles, the 11 principles of transformation. And came to be because in that first book, I talk about what losses are, what grief is, how it is manifested, and it contains 60 real stories of losses. Half of them, 30, the loss of a loved one. But I also have other losses, because there are other losses. I just mentioned one to you, the earthquake, the loss of a home and all that. But there are other losses, like loss of a pet, loss, divorce, loss of health. Many situations that we face in life, as you know, that are losses, that can
Mhm.
be losses. But when I recopilated all those stories, I said, but I want to give something to the reader. I want to give them tools, how to deal with the loss. And that's how I came to create the methodology. And it was something that it just came to me. I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. So I started writing, not on the computer, writing,
Mm.
on the paper.
By hand.
Started writing. Exactly, by hand, right? And I would
Yeah.
always say that to connect with the brain.
Yep.
So
Yep.
started writing, and then I said, stop. Wrote, and then stopped. And I counted them. I saw the name of each, and I counted them. When I finished counting them, Tiff, what I felt in my heart, it will always be in my heart because there were 11. My father died November 11th. And for me, when I did that, I was like, for me, my principles, I love my principles. I'm
Oh.
like, oh my God, they're
Mhm.
11. I said,
Mhm.
it's amazing. So I I introduced them in the book. And then after that, when they were introduced in the book, I have developed them into seminars, into workshops and online program because the idea with the principles, the intention is in creating this methodology or system, as you will, is to invite the griever to to process their loss, to be there, not to run away from it, because you know how it is, grief follows us wherever we go. So to be present and to process grief. And well, the first principle is accept your loss. And we know that that is the hardest thing to accept. However, accept doesn't mean that you are happy it happened and that you're okay. No, you're accepting the reality. This is what happened. Because unless we accept what happened, we come to terms with this happened, then we can make the decision what to do about it. What
Mhm.
to do about it. And after that, after they accept your loss, then because with that, it's not that, okay, you accept your loss and that's it. You continue living. No, because if you accepted the loss, then there has been a loss. Then comes grief, which is the natural and unique response to loss. So I called it live your grief. Live it, feel it, experience it. And of course, you know, it gets manifested physically, socially, emotionally, spiritually,
Mhm.
all those dimensions, right?
Mhm.
So after I came with that, that I would say is the foundation, because the idea is transform your loss, transform your life. Then I added different tools, if you will. Like the third one is develop your spiritual dimension. And there I talk about the value of gratitude, the
Mhm.
value of forgiving. For me, forgiveness is huge.
Mhm.
The value of love. Forgiving is not only forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves, you know? So that would be the third principle. Then the fourth is express your feelings. Instead of walking around with a mask, sometimes we do, no, express them. Either talking about it, writing about it, but express your feelings. Then the fifth is share with others, because I believe in community. I believe in holding that space with other people and opening our hearts. We are not an island. And yes, it's beautiful and it's needed to have some me time, time for solitude, time to recharge and all that. However, when we're grieving, to connect and share with others, it's so powerful. So that is principle fifth. The sixth one is take care of yourself, because when we are grieving, when we are in the acute stage of grief, we may not feel like taking care of ourselves, you know.
Mhm.
However, it's important because we can control that. We
Mhm.
can still control something, and that's one of them.
Mhm.
So take care of your, you know, your nutrition, your rest, exercise if your health allows it. No, the mental aspect, the spiritual aspect, taking care of yourself. And then the principle seventh is do rituals. You know, because
Mhm.
in doing rituals, we express, isn't it? You like to do rituals?
Yeah, absolutely. That has helped me
I
tremendously.
Yes, definitely. Because rituals, and it's interesting because many years ago, I used to teach at the university. I actually taught in two universities. At FIU, I taught death and dying. After taking that class, that was my my door to this world.
Yeah.
I ended up, you know, teaching it. I loved teaching that. And the other one was in at Miami-Dade College, world religions. You know,
Mhm.
the religions of the world, because I have a master's in religious studies. And then I would talk about rituals a lot because ritual is, and they would ask me, Professor Houben, what is a ritual? Well, ritual is doing something that has a special meaning to you. Because, for example, when we talk about the loss of a loved one, if you like candles, maybe you like candles because of the mood they give you, or the smell of a nice candle, lavender, one of those, and then you light a candle, beautiful. However, if you every single night you go in and you have the picture of your loved one on a table, and you have a candle every night, you go there, you light your candle, and you either pray or you have a moment with your loved one. That is a ritual
Mhm.
because it's meaningful to us.
Mm.
So I love doing rituals. There's so many ways to do rituals, even including writing on a journal. That can be a ritual. So that would be number 7.
I'm gonna share just quickly
Tell me.
mine with my brother. I actually
Oh,
talk to him in the car. When I'm driving to work, I'm like, "Hey, brother, morning. How's it
mm,
going?" And
love
and then
it.
I'll play a song that I know he likes or that I like and that he would make fun of me for. And then I just have that time with him. I actually picture him sitting beside me in the seat. And so like that's just something that I've done pretty much since he passed away, is just to feel that connection with him. So yeah, rituals are so beautiful.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. So profound, so
Mm,
intimate, because it's so important to
mhm,
talk about keeping the connection.
mhm, mhm.
That is so important because sometimes people, the comments that people make, sometimes that are not the most helpful, they do it with a good intention, but sometimes they don't help. Because I hear from my clients that people, when they're talking about their loved ones, or they do things like the ones you share, I do things like those that you shared also, they tell them, don't do those things. You're not allowing them to rest. So sometimes clients are like, Ligia, is this right? Is this wrong? How does it feel for you? And it is beautiful, that connection, because the connection never ends, because love is eternal. So,
Mhm.
Killeen, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yes, that is a beautiful ritual, definitely.
Thank
So
you.
that would be then, yeah, number 7, the principle number 7. Then we go into principle number 8, and that is live the now. It's what we call now mindfulness. And it's interesting because when I wrote the book, I wrote first in Spanish. It came out in 2007. And I didn't call it, mindfully, because we were not using that much, the word back then.
Yeah.
So I call it live the now. What is that? Live and be present, you
Mhm,
know, live the now. That is so important
mm.
in any context, right? Then principle ninth is super important, and we hear that a lot. Modify your thoughts, how to work with our mind, the type of thoughts we have, because it depends on those thoughts if we go to a place of suffering, or if we go to a place of honoring with love.
Mm.
That can make a difference in your grieving process, the type of thoughts you entertain. So that would be number 9. Number 10 is, after you go, you do all these things, then you come and you rebuild your world. Your world that got shattered. Your world that changed, because after a loss, there's always change. But then you rebuild it, and it's that ability that we have, and we make that decision how our world would be. Who am I after the loss? Who am I? Sometimes, and you know this, we become a better versions of ourselves,
Mhm.
after a loss. And then number 11th is visualize the life you want. Visualize the life you want. So in a nutshell, those are the 11 principles.
They're so beautiful. And you wrote this book before your mom passed away, correct?
Yes, yes, and it's interesting. It's a story because my first book ever, was inspired by my thesis when I did a master's in religious studies. and it's about the Virgin Mary and Nicaraguan women. It is in Spanish. I loved the study so much. It was for with 100 women, and I loved it that I'm like, I'm going to make it a book. No, so I translated it into Spanish because my thesis was in English. I translated it into Spanish, so I made it a book. But of course, you know how it is. After you write a book, then people say you can write another book, right? So
Mhm.
my mom came and was, of course, I lost my father when I was 12, and then my mom was my mother, my father, and mother for so many years, no?
Mhm.
So she came to me and she's like, she called me Lijita. Lijita, she said, what if you write a book about your father? Because I told you that my father had a story from having those carriages, starting like that, to have the many dealerships and businesses and all that about the auto industry.
Mhm.
And she's like, you write a story, write your father's story. I'm like, okay, mommy. I said, I will. And I started and I said, mommy, do you know what? That's not the book I'm going to write. Eventually I did. And
Mhm.
I'm so happy because it was the best gift ever I could give to my mom.
Mhm.
But back then I'm like, mommy, it's not the story, the book I'm going to write. This is going to be dedicated to him because it was dedicated to his memory. However, I need to share my story. So
Mhm.
my story is one of those 30 stories that I told you about the loss of a loved one. And my mom got enthusiastic and she said, I want to give my story as well. So
Aw.
she gave her story, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
because are those stories that we carry, no?
Mhm.
So that's when I wrote that book.
Mhm.
That was the first one, and it was dedicated to him. And then I introduced the principles. So my mom, I wrote that book, as I said, 2007. Then I wrote other books in English and about grief. And my latest, which first it was in Spanish and then translated into English, the one that you mentioned, thank you, allow me to live my grief and heal from the inside out. This is inspired by the loss of my beloved mother because my mom died 5 years ago. I was 60, and my mom was my father and mother for 48 years.
Mhm.
And she was a centenarian, Tiff.
Mm.
She died 2 months before 101. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, she was the cutest thing ever. Cutest, adorable, cheerful, sweet. No, my mom, she was she was a blessing, and my father too. So I was blessed. I always thank God for that. And so when my mom died, I was extremely like enmeshed with my mom, super close. She
Yeah.
came to live with us her latest years with my husband and I, and I was her caregiver. Even though I worked, I had someone who helped me out when I was working, but I was dedicated to her. And after she died, it was extremely hard.
Mhm.
Extremely hard because when we talk about losses, it has to do with attachment. The
Mhm.
more attached you are to someone, the harder it's going to be when you don't have them because
Mhm.
it has to do with attachment.
Mhm.
So, and so I was writing back then, I was keeping a journal. Before she died, she was very frail, old, and all that. She was in hospice because she was old, not because she was sick. She died actually in COVID times, but not of COVID, of old age. And then I was keeping a journal, expressing how I felt and all that. After she died, I continued working and writing, and I was starting to write, allow me to live my grief. But then I said, I need something else. I need something else. And then I wrote a book about her life.
Mhm.
It is in Spanish. And my mother had a motto, a phrase that she said if you would go to her and say, her name was Alicia. Doña Alicia, I feel sad. I feel worried that this is happening or that. She would lift her hands and she would say, hearts up. In Spanish is arriba corazones, hearts up, like,
Yeah.
motivating people, no?
Yeah.
She did it all the time.
Yeah.
So that's how I called the book, Arriba
Mhm.
Corazones,
Yeah.
celebrating my father, my mom, my centenarian mother's life. That's how I called it. But the beauty is that applying what I say, what I do during the rituals, I would every single day write on that. And of course, I did it's not that I did, okay, I'll do this principle and then I'll do this principle. No, I felt them because I created them. So I
Mhm.
was living them. I was living them, being grateful. The love, oh, always that love for her. I would talk about it. I would share with people, like what I say, And doing the ritual thing, I said, no, I'm going to write this book about her because the bond was so strong and I didn't want to let go of that. And like, well, how, in which way, we keep that connection very alive. The book has more than 200 pictures of her.
Mhm.
So that was the best thing that I could do after my mother died. I tell you, because it was very healing. So
Mhm.
that was a process of transformation itself and of healing. So yes,
Did you
there I
have
applied every single one.
did you have, an experience where you were challenged with what you teach? And, like, as you were going through that experience of deep loss of your mom, was there one of your principles that was challenged?
Thank God, no. I
Mhm.
say it looking at you, no, because I accepted. With saying that I accepted doesn't mean that it was easy. No, in the book I say it felt like it was so real.
Mm.
But I never said no, no, she died. It was horrible, horrible, it's
Mhm.
horrible.
Mhm.
I accepted it. It happened. It happened. So
Mhm.
I lived my grief fully.
Mhm.
As I said, I was very grateful for having her, for having my people. No, super grateful at the third principle and all that. The express your feelings, no problem there. I am very open, expressing, sharing with others as well, taking care of myself. I was so diligent with that. Exercising for me, super powerful, super important, because they say that as we change our physical state, we change our emotional state. And that is
Mhm.
something so important for the people who are watching this and listening.
Mhm.
Exercise. Again, if your health allows it, always check with your doctor. But to change, to go out, walk around the block,
Mhm.
that's fine. But
Mhm.
to do something. So then doing rituals, I did a lot of rituals. Well,
Mhm.
writing her book was one. I would light a candle like 2 months after she died was her birthday. It would have been her 101 birthday. What I did was my oldest sister, that she died 2 years ago. She died of cancer 2 years ago. I took care of her also. And so she and her daughter, my niece, which I love dearly, came to my house, and we even create a ritual, singing happy birthday to my mom.
Mhm.
So, with her favorite cake, carrot cake. So we had that ritual, with a balloon, and then went to a cemetery. So yes, I embrace all that. Live the present. Absolutely. I stay there, always in the present. Never going back. No. How am I going to do without her? No, today. Today, I only have today. I say with grief, I don't say it, grief is a day at a time. For me, grief is a moment at a time. So I was very present with every single emotion. I didn't ignore them. If I had to cry, I cried.
Mhm.
And what what showed me that thing with a moment at a time is that before my mom died, someone had invited me because it was in COVID time. Remember that there was a lockdown,
Yep.
and but things started to open up. No, pero when I was invited to this podcast, I'll tell you, people were not going, yet outside. No,
Mhm.
so to talk about grief and all that, this was planned like 3 months before my mother died, and I said yes, I'll do this, whatever. But then after she died, the the moderator of the podcast, she said, Ligia, would you like to change the date? Because your mom just died. It was like three weeks after my mother had died.
Mhm.
And she said, maybe it's too much for you. And I said, no, do you know what? I want to do it because I love to talk about grief. I
Mhm.
love to help the griever. If something I say can help one person, I love it.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
fills my heart. So I said, you know what? No, let's do it. So we did a podcast just like what we're doing now. We did it. We're talking about grief, about everything. All right. When we finished, that we stayed talking afterwards a little. She was like, how did you do it? She said, I thought that maybe you were going to start crying. How did you do this? I'm like, I'm so glad that I could help someone with something I said, with that hope, right? Okay. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, very sacred experience. Great. I left.
Mhm.
I was at the office. When I arrived home, my husband said, "Do you want to go with me to the supermarket here? It's the grocery store. It's Publix, very well known Publix in Florida." And I'm like, "Okay, let's go." We went. When he's paying, I'm next to him, just waiting. And the lady she's packing, the things in the bag. I used to take my mom every day almost to Publix. She loved to go to Publix because people would give her a donut. They would give her a donut. Yes, it was so cute. And
Yeah.
she loved it. And everybody came to her because she was always happy and sweet and all that. So, because her mind was always very sharp. And so, while this woman is packing the bags, she turned to me and she's like, "Hi, Chica. And your mommy? Where is she?" In that moment, Tiff,
Mm.
I started crying.
Mhm.
In that moment, my tears came down. And the poor woman, I was sorry. I felt sorry for her because the poor woman said, and I'm like, she died, 3
Mhm.
weeks ago. My husband turned to me because he saw me. I was crying. And he said,
Mhm.
"Are you okay?" I'm like, "That's fine. That's
Mhm.
fine."
Mhm.
And then I left.
Mhm.
And then I reflected because what I did, I studied myself a lot in my grieving process. And I turned to him and I said, "Do you see what happened? I just I just talked for an hour, half
Mhm.
an hour ago
Mhm.
about grief, super well, nothing. And now I was just asked about my mom. That was a trigger
Mhm.
and I just broke down.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
it's a moment at a time.
A moment at a
Yeah.
time. So, one of the things that I actually have given a keynote on, about on the topic of grief is that there's multiple kinds of grief, and you've touched on that as well. It's not just the death of somebody. I personally have lost my brother, and then I went through a separation and a divorce. I've lost some friends. I've lost pets. I've lost a job. Like, there's many, many layers and many types of grief. And what are some of the surprising ones that you have seen people overlook?
Overlook.
Mhm.
There's one that is very strong, and I just did a podcast about that. And it's like when you are grieving the loss of the person you used to be.
Mm. Mhm.
That is a big one. That
Mm.
is a big one because people get surprised, that because people may say they're depressed and no, they're grieving.
Mhm.
They're grieving that loss. You know,
Mhm.
that is a very strong one. And also, of course, is the loss because they may say also, that they are irritable or they are frustrated and all that when they had a dream, they wanted to achieve something and they are not able to. Sometimes because of life, sometimes because of the actions they didn't take. So there's regret also. But that is a grief because there is a loss of something that you wanted to achieve and you didn't, a loss of a goal, a loss of a dream. And those things are also very, very hard to deal with. The other one is about the loss of youth,
Mhm.
especially living in the society that we live in. And that is about anti-aging and always looking young. And suddenly when the changes come and the physical limitations may start and people they wrestle with that and they get upset and they start really despising, being old and all that. So, but if one, for that, we apply the principles, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
because not too long ago, the principles I do it also live as a program, 8 weeks, 8 week program. And not too long ago, and I talked about this in a podcast I did, my podcast, that the second week, this lady came, beautiful lady, adorable. And she's like, "Ligia, can I join your program? Because I'm experiencing a loss, and I don't know if the principles would apply because there were people who were there were because they have lost a loved one. That was specific for the loss of a loved one, coincidentally, incidentally. And I said, "Do you want to share the loss that you are experiencing?" And she's like, "Well, I'm experiencing the loss of the woman I used to be." When she said that, it's not the first time that I heard that. I'm like, "Of course they can help you," I said, "the principals." And you know what? I said, "Let's do something." So we joined the group because I had gone, at the entrance. So she came with me and I introduced her to welcome her, and all that. And then I asked the rest of the group, the ladies, because there were only women also in that group, because sometimes there are men, but that was only women. And I asked them, "Please raise your hand if you have ever experienced the loss of the woman you used to be." And they did.
Mm-hmm.
Besides losing a loved one, also the woman. So that is something that people, when they come to realize that, wow, that's what they are actually missing, that sense of who I was before. And if they do something about it, they would feel differently. However, if they stay stuck resisting the changes and resisting what are the changes are, then they have a hard time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I could talk to you forever about this, but I'm going to bring up this screen here for those listening who want to go deeper. You can find Ligia at ligiahouben.com. She even has a YouTube channel, which you should go check out. And she shares videos about grief, transitions, and finding light through loss. So I end every episode asking my guest what they are grateful for today, because in every hard, there is always something beautiful. What are you grateful for today?
For today, having this conversation with you, because we have shared, and I thank you for that. We have shared a sacred space.
Mm-hmm.
This is unique. This is very special to me. I have had the opportunity to share with you about a topic that is sacred for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So we share this, we share this. And for me, that is a privilege. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for this, Tiff.
So, as I sit with this conversation with Ligia, what really is staying with me is the reminder that grief isn't something that we need to fix or get over. It's something that we learn to live with and honor and even transform. Ligia's story shows us that when we bring love to our loss, we open the door to hope, renewal, and connection. So if you're listening right now and carrying a loss that just feels so heavy, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't have to rush yourself. And you most definitely don't have to do it alone. Healing doesn't come from pushing grief away. It comes from creating space for it, breathing through it, and allowing it to soften in its own time. If you're ready for a gentle place to begin, two offerings that I'd love to share with you are my free guided meditation to hopefully help you ground and reconnect with the waves of grief that feel too strong, or my weekly exhale newsletter. It's just a little pause in your inbox that brings some small reflections and practices and reminders that you are part of something bigger. And quietly between us, I'm also building a gathering space, a circle where conversations like this don't just end when the episode ends. It's not ready to be named quite yet, but it is coming. But for now, I'll leave you with this. Grief and love are two sides of the same coin. If you feel the weight of grief, it means you've also known the depth of love. And that love can be the very thing that carries you forward. Thank you, Ligia, again so much for this conversation and for the work that you are doing in the grief space. It is so incredibly beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tiff.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Hard Beautiful Journey. I hope today's episode inspired you to embrace your own vulnerabilities and recognize the strength within you. Remember, every story of resilience adds to the beauty of our shared journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. Your support helps me spread hope and healing to even more listeners. Until next time, keep shining your light and embracing the beauty in your journey. Bye-bye.